Welcome to the One for the Road podcast. My name is Mr. K. Alongside me is C Squared. Tonight, I celebrated my 60th birthday yesterday. So, this is a happy birthday to me episode. I looked back on my 60 years on the planet and wrote a list of 8 magical movie moments. Five moments in my life in the theaters that I thought were made a tremendous impact on my life, and the 3 drive-in theater moments that made it were quite memorable. Let's put it that way, and you'll see in a moment.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one in from the
Go for it.
Midwest too. That was a sad day when they closed down. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll just give you a slight preview. They used to run movies 24/7,
Oh,
365
holy moly!
days a year. And it was
Uh,
a sad day in Midwest history when that movie cinema shut down.
all right, I'm going to start my list with my number 5 most memorable theatrical moment, The Exorcist. Now, The Exorcist came out in 73, and my parents love horror movies, but they weren't that sadistic where they brought me into R-rated The Exorcist when I was 8 and tried to traumatize me. Thankfully, they did not do that. But I had heard the buzz. I'm in college and I see it in 85 in a theater and I almost pass out. So that's why it's the only movie to almost make me pass out. Now, the wild thing is, the scene that does it is they take a scalpel to Reagan's neck or neck area and just slice it, and the blood just is pouring out of her. And I almost passed out watching that scene. Now, the rest of the movie is really scary and unbelievable scenes, which I will not go into. Spoilers from a 1973 movie. But
Well,
really intense
I
movie.
hate to point this out, John, about your age, but if you haven't seen the movie now,
Right.
by now,
Right.
yeah, feel free to spoil it. And
Yeah.
you
Right.
had
Right.
quite a runway to actually see the previews in the movie.
Right. There's some scenes that I just don't they're so gross I just don't want to explain them. But yeah. I think a lot of to your point, a lot of people are familiar with the over 40-year-old movie, if not 50-year-old. Oh, over 50-year-old now.
Yep.
73. So that's number 5. Number 4 is Forrest Gump. I saw that in 1994 with my mom. I was 29 at the time. I was single. I was engaged. I was not married. It's the last movie I saw with my mom. So my mom was like, "Oh my God, have you seen Forrest Gump?" And I'm like, "No." I go, "I heard it's good." She's, "Oh my God, we're going, we're going." So she like dragged me. I mean, it wasn't like I was kicking or screaming, but she's like, "Oh my God, you got to see this movie." And it was very good. And I got to admit, out of in my 60 years of watching movies, that is one of the best movies I've ever seen in the theater. And I was glad to see it with my mom.
Well,
And it was just my mom too. My dad wasn't around, and like I said, I was 29, so my brothers weren't around either. So I was visiting my mom.
Andy gave you a good piece of information. One thing I'll say about certain movies is they do give you information sometimes that is highly useful in your life. So he was telling you, John, that life is like a box of chocolates.
Yes, yes,
You have
yes,
no idea what you're going to get.
yes.
And I
Oh
will go
yeah.
back to The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman. Had you have listened to Plastics Were the Future, you'd have
Right.
been rich as all get out.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, Forrest Gump was just a really great movie. I mean, it just goes from the 60s, covers every decade really well and trends and stuff like that. So I really like that. Gonna go to drive-in now. My number 3 drive-in moment. I saw Conan the Destroyer, which is actually Conan the Barbarian 2, the sequel. I saw it in 1984. Now, not a memorable movie, but the way I attended that movie was different. I rode in the trunk of my friend's Dodge Dart and attended it for free. So he put me, I fit in his Dodge Dart because I was wicked skinny. I fit in the trunk of his Dodge Dart, and we drove to the Glen Drive-In Theater in Queensbury, New York, upstate New York. And we made it, and he parks the car.
Who has been watching that video footage for 4 decades trying to figure out who that was that ripped them off, John, and now you've exposed yourself on a national platform.
So this was inspired by a movie called Drive-In, and Drive-In was a movie in 1976, and it was inspired. That movie had like these dudes pull up, guy lifts up the trunk, 3 guys jump out of the trunk. So we had to reenact it, but it was just me. So my friend parks the car, opens up the trunk. I come flying out like Superman, jumped up in the air like that. And yeah, nobody was like, hey, they got in for free. Nobody turned us in. We saw the rest of the movie. But yeah, looking back, the drive wasn't far, but little risky being in the trunk. And I wasn't handcuffed or anything like that, which is good.
Yeah. Don't make me comment on any of those type of scenarios.
Right. The drive-in's crazy because I mean, back in the 70s and the 80s, it was like you could have 6 cases in your trunk.
You know what, John? I will tell you a lot of the fact that you brought that up, a lot of movie cinemas are shutting down. I know a bunch of them around me. The one that has operated probably for 70 years and was able to stay in business, though obviously in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of these drive-throughs closed down. You know? They are still doing well and still always packed.
Yeah.
People have rediscovered the novelty of the drive-in.
Yes.
And it's an experience that you cannot get at home. You know?
Right.
It's still a unique thing.
Yeah, the holiday is by us, and it's just an event. I mean, it's packed all the time, and it's just like, I mean, you go in the summer. I went a lot with my kids when they were little, and you go in the summer, and it's just like a party before the movie. I mean, you get your frisbees out, you get your footballs out, you play catch with the kids, get them all tired out, and then the movie starts. And your kids are gone by the second movie, and you're watching.
Well, and you can always get out of the car. Lots of times they'll play multiple movies, so you get that. So it is an event, and there's people who can get out of their car and sit on the hood of their car and just turn on their radio. Or I don't think any of them use speakers anymore. And that's
right. I remember those.
It all broadcasts over the radio. But the bottom line is that, sit outside on a great summer night and watch a movie on the hood of your car. That's fair.
Yeah.
Now, it used to be a lot easier to do that when the hood of your car was made of steel, but we'll make that, we'll save that for another episode.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Or the door, or the floor of the trunk in the Dodge Dart was made of steel.
Right. Well, my son brought up this, which I hadn't thought of. He goes, "You know what's great about the drive-in? You can talk. You're sitting next to people your family, and it's like you can talk. You don't have to be quiet, and you just make jokes and stuff like that. And you're given a lot more freedom. It's like,
Yeah.
I was in the movies today with my son, and we were, you're dead silent throughout the whole movie.
Right.
But at the drive-in, you could go, oh, or, and make comments. So I thought that was neat. All right. Number 3 on my theater list, I have Revenge of the Sith. 20 years ago, it was out. I saw it with my son. So there's the first father-son movie I saw, Star Wars movie that I saw in the theater with my son. Its 20th anniversary is this year, and it's right around my birthday. So a lot of these movies that I saw are right around my birthday. Revenge of the Sith, I believe, premiered May 20th, May 19th, and I was born May 3rd. So great experience with my son. My son was 6 at the time, and he just absolutely loved it. I think it's one of the most underrated Star Wars movies. It's very good. Did you ever see that, C Squared?
I didn't. But
Yeah.
I think, pen a note to Mel Brooks to say that he should combine that with Revenge of the Nerds and see what
Yes,
we come up
yes,
with.
yes. That would be good. Okay, you'll like this next one. Number 2, Drive-In. 1985. In South Glens Falls, there was a drive-in called the Ost. Proudly did X-rated movies in the drive-in.
Oh, still.
So the first time I ever went was with a couple of buddies and a lot of beer in 1985. We saw 2 nondescript X-rated movies. I'll never forget the second one we saw. There was a chase scene on a beach, and they decided to play the People's Court theme song as the cops are chasing the delinquents down the beach. So a little history about the Ost, which is a riot. The Ost Drive-In was opened in 1948, and I looked this up. The 3 movies that they were showing on opening night in 1948 was Cheyenne, had a Three Stooges short and a cartoon, which is typical drive-in, where there'd be a lot. There'd always used to be a lot of cartoons beforehand. The last, oh, I gotta look it up. It's so funny. Oh, I remember. The last movie at the Ost, it was 1989. It was a triple X double bill of Stud Lovers and Centerfold Girls.
Nice.
Was the way they went out. So I guess I was lucky that I got there 4 years before they closed, but that was a memorable moment. Were there any X-rated drive-in?
No,
I've never come across
no.
any. I didn't know
Well,
if it was an
I
80s
will
thing.
tell you that there was a sheriff named Simon Lease, and he was having a huge battle with a gentleman, a nationally and internationally famous gentleman from Ohio named Larry Flint.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so there was absolutely nothing going on of that level
Uh,
because Sheriff Lease was looked at that type of stuff with a heavy hand, and unrelated to movies. Fortunately, Larry Flint, while he could have run his corporation anywhere and eventually did run it out of Las Vegas, in particularly stayed in the Hamilton County, Ohio area just to be a public nuisance. And so hats off to Larry. It's a shame
yeah,
he didn't make
yeah.
any films.
Yes, yes. There might have been a few at the Oz that he
Yeah,
might have been
exactly.
proud of
I'm
or
sure he
stuff.
sold a few in the back of his magazines.
All right. Oh yeah, yeah. Or some of the participants on in his magazines might
Yeah,
have
right.
graduated to
Went on to
actresses. Yeah,
illustrious film
film
careers.
careers. Yes, yes, yes. So what's all right about the Ost is like 48. It's clean. I mean, so here's the vision I have is like from 48. I mean, I think the wheels start falling off in the 70s, and the guy's like, man, what can we do to save this? Hey, I know. Let's start running triple X movies. And I mean, the place like held 300. You could get 300 cars in there. It was huge.
Wow.
And like from the 70s until it closed, it was triple X.
Yeah, that is amazing. But of course, it was New York, which had a
All right.
much more lenient leaning
Yes. Yes.
towards that type of stuff.
And it's a riot that it closes like in 89, like the summer of 89, it closes right before like the new decades. And even, about midway through that new decade came more like political correctness
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I think the notion, if you were going to go into the 90s with a triple X, proudly a triple X drive-in, I think people got a lot more conservative about that. And
Well, and Pee Wee Herman went into syndication.
right, 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 and that was about that time too.
So they lost that revenue.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. So, all right, I have number 2 theater, Pinocchio. So Pinocchio was released in 1940, but I saw it in 69. I was 4 years old. It was the first movie I ever saw. So that makes number 2 on my list. First movie I ever saw, my parents, when I was little, everything they got me was Pinocchio. It was just just a barrage of Pinocchio. And I loved it. They would read me the story. We had 2 albums of it. I mean, 33s, folks. If you don't know what vinyl is,
Yeah, right.
vinyl was big in the late 60s, believe me. No CDs, no, they had 8 tracks, but anyways, 233 vinyls. They bought me this book and they would read me the book. I mean, I was just so jazzed up for it. And then we finally saw it. It was at the Paramount Theater in Glens Falls. It was one of the few theaters that were near us. And like again, we're talking 69. And I was just blown away. It was the first movie I ever saw. I'll never forget it. It's just an amazing experience as a child, the very first movie you ever see, and just how big the screen is. And I was telling this to my son, and he's like, man, that screen was a lot bigger than that black and white TV you were watching.
Well, and having somewhat of an art background and having worked on a few animated shorts back in the art school days, the quality of a Disney was unmatched, is unmatched today, right? So I won't go into bore the audience with the details of cell-based animation, but you had two camps: the Fred Flintstone, Hanna-Barbera camp, and even somewhere in between was the Warner Brothers camp, where you're reusing frames, or the Disney, where you have built and painted every frame and every background from scratch, and the business would have collapsed these days when it was, how long do you think it'll take you to make that movie? 8 years,
Right,
and
right.
hundreds of people working, if not 1,000 people working on this for 8 years, man. So
Yeah.
you did pick one of the unparalleled stuff. The 40s through the late 70s Disney stuff is unparalleled
Oh yes,
in the
yes.
quality of the hand done animation. There is nothing like, you'd go bankrupt doing something like that today.
Right, right, right. I mean, Pinocchio was amazing. It's released in 1940 in color. I mean, Snow White even before that in the 30s in color.
Yep, right.
It is just amazing back then. And the wild thing is, I mean, Pinocchio's released in 40. There was an incredible buzz and excitement from like 65 to 70
Yeah.
that this movie was going to be in theaters again.
Well, and so now I am down this animation pathway, and I'll just say one thing. So Disney supposedly used a technique called rotoscope. And what was rotoscope was, I filmed the entire movie as a live action movie and then painted every
Oh,
frame
wow.
by hand of over the top of the live action. And so that it wasn't a rotoscope film, the live action stuff was removed, but every frame in the movies were created by were a drawing of a live action single
Wow.
frame. Folks, if you don't know about movies, projector movies, it's 24 frames a second.
Right.
And so that's an awful lot of frames.
Yeah, that reminds me to that point, Peter Pan, when they made Peter Pan, they had all the voice actors act out the movie like it was live action in
Yep.
front of the artists. So
Right.
you saw Captain Hook and Tinkerbell, the woman who was doing Tinkerbell's voice, and Tinkerbell didn't say anything, but they got this real, like, and she's still alive today. She's like 99. I met her too. She was at Cincy Comic-Con this year. And she was like, yeah, I was Tinkerbell. I did all the movements so they could get it down in the actual movie.
And I wouldn't be surprised if using that pseudo, I'm not saying that they did rotoscope, because rotoscope is something different. It leaves a live action in there. Pseudo rotoscope, that's how you would sync the audio to the actual movie. If you had zoomed in on somebody's mouth movements, and did each one of those frames, that's how you would more easily in the 1940s sync an audio track to exact voice movement. Because think of how hard that would actually be in the 40s.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
You would be cutting an audio tape, because that's what happened. Is you would have been recording on potentially 4-track audio, and what these studios were doing was editing audio reel-to-reel tapes with a razor blade, and essentially editing movie frames with a razor blade. If you think about that, folks, that is quite intensive.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And time intensive and manual. Yeah. Do you recall the first movie you ever saw in the theaters? Was it Pinocchio?
No, but I think it was a Disney.
It was probably Disney.
You want me to take a guess, John? I can't.
Sure.
This. How about the somebody I still like to this day, the invincible Kurt Russell.
Oh, yeah.
The computer that wore tennis shoes.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. How about that for like an early, and that was probably at a drive-through.
I saw it in a drive-in. In the early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of those Kurt Russell movies in the drive-in in the 70s. They are some of the first movies I've ever seen, but I mean, Pinocchio was number one. I knew
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was just it just blew me away. But yeah, that brings back memories. I saw all of those Kurt Russell movies in the drive-in.
Yep.
So my number one drive-in, nice segue. My number one drive-in memory is Friday the 13th. I saw it in 1979 when it premiered. So Friday the 13th, I believe, premiered in May. I saw it in the drive-in with my mom and dad in August. Spoiler alert for this 50-year-old movie, nearly 50-year-old movie. I was 15, no, 1980. I'm sorry, not 1979. I was 15, and we saw it, and we're like, oh, that was a good movie. We're driving away before it ends, and that's as we're driving away, I'm seeing the scene where Jason comes out of the lake and like attacks the woman in the boat who had survived everything. And I went, oh! My dad's like, what the hell's going on? I was like, look, I go, the movie wasn't over. Jesus Christ, Jason came out of the lake. The dead kid is still alive.
Yeah.
And I did not sleep a wink that night. I was scared for like the next 24 hours. It was
See,
just
and I,
like
I never
scared out of my
never
wits.
saw movies like that until I was older. But I will tell you, and I'm thinking this was probably one of these rehashes when I was maybe like 16 or 17 years old. But um, the Texas Chainsaw
Oh, Jesus.
Massacre comes to mind because somebody stood up in the back of a pickup truck and fired up a
Oh,
chainsaw, and they had security out there to remove them from the
wow.
drive-in, which is hilarious because at the age of 16
Wow.
or 17, yeah, I'm laughing my butt off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you were 8 or even
Thinking
15,
it's
you might have
quite
been like,
hilarious. Most of the people in the drive-in thinking it's quite hilarious, dude.
that's
Obviously,
good.
management did not find
Yeah,
it
they were not laughing.
all that funny. But going back to the 70s and the 80s, me and John being around the same age, you didn't get the cops called on you. Now
Oh
those
no,
people would get the
no,
cops called.
no.
The rental security came over and said, "Okay, boys, you think that's really funny? Get out."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah. The owner in those days, the owner, or like you said, even like the upper managers would be like, ready to
probably
fight.
laughing,
You
dude.
know,
Yeah, right.
they were going to take care of it without the cops. They were like, get out of here, or let's go in the parking lot and exchange some punches.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
right.
pleased.
Right. Yeah, dude. It
I mean,
was
people, to your point, people took care of that themselves. They never had to involve in law enforcement to fight their battles or take care of things. They were
yeah.
like, I'll take care of this. I own this place. They can't do this in this
Right,
place.
right.
A
And
lot of
when
pride.
ironically enough, you know, uh, I don't want to get off the movie subject, but my band played a lot of outdoor gigs, um, like that, and out of like 5 or 6 years, we hired security one time for a Fourth of July event.
Mm,
The other times, the owner was the security. The
right,
owner of this
right,
venue was the
right,
security. And
right.
actually, you were probably better off dealing with the cops or rental security than dealing with him. I will just
Right,
tell you this,
right,
because if you mouthed off, it was going to get really ugly. You were going to do what he said, or else, dude.
right, right.
That's
Some injuries might come their way.
exactly, dude. And that's the way the 80s and
Yeah,
90s went, dude.
yeah.
Early 90s went.
So my number one theatrical moment is Star Wars 1977. I had just turned 12. Star Wars premiered on May 25th. I had just, like I said, I had just turned 12. I saw it 2 days later. May 25th was a Wednesday. I saw it the Friday it came out. And it was just like, there wasn't a lot of ads or hype. I mean, what was wild was the hype of the people who saw it Wednesday and Thursday started like bleeding into societies, much like the community I was in upstate New York. So me and my buddies go to see it. And the thing I'll never forget was there's this English guy going, Star Wars program. I'm like, where did we import the English guy to peddle the Star Wars programs in upstate New York? So I thought that was weird. And then we sit down and we are just amazed. And it is packed too. And it was like, you didn't have a
I,
science
I
meeting.
did
Like,
see that movie in the theaters when it debuted, John, and I
cool.
didn't go at that time. But as I got older and got into the art scenario, it became, Spielberg's company, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, did quite a bit of that. We were talking about rotoscope in the Disney areas that used a tons of what they considered backwinding, which was double exposing the film, to do those special effects, and that was genius level.
Yes,
That was
yes.
genius level. So as I got a little bit older, again into the 15 and 16, and started to figure out about movies, it was like, this literally was brilliant.
Yes.
BP, the what he did technological wise at the time was brilliant. Build
Yes.
all those small models and stuff of that nature and figure out how to double expose the film and get all those pieces together. Absolutely, hats off. Genius.
Yes.
And the rumor is that there were discussions that film took him so much money and so long to make. There were discussions that he would be removed, and they would either throw the footage in the can or replace Mr. Spielberg with
It
some
was Lucas, George
director.
Lucas.
Or yeah, George Lucas. I'm sorry, George Lucas had ILM, and Spielberg was involved in that. So you're right. But
DreamWorks. Spielberg's in DreamWorks, by the way, just
yeah,
FYI.
but I thought Spielberg was the director and Lucas.
No, no, Lucas. Lucas,
Okay.
all Lucas.
Huh.
And Lucas,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
yeah,
maybe it was Lucas.
Lucas does Industrial Light and Magic.
Yep. 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 My bad. There. Replacing names. Sorry, George.
I want to give George his credit because it
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Sorry about that, George.
unfreaking believable.
I
And
was
it was
more taken
all
by the
him.
technology, but quite brilliant.
Yes, yes. I mean, I was so blessed to see a movie like that when I was 12. And people are amazed, and there's other people who weren't born. I mean, and there's people who've been born. Lots of people have been born since '77, so they didn't have the opportunity. And even if you were 1 or 2 years old and you went, you wouldn't have remembered. And I met some people who are like, yeah, I was like 6. I kind of remember it. I remember it being pretty cool, but I didn't really get it. But at 12, I mean, you
What
definitely
was in?
got it.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
just
you're like,
blown away.
how did they do this? This is incredible.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, the funny thing is, the one scene that I never forget was the stormtroopers are white and they're bad. And I was thinking of, this is how old I am. The Westerns, the bad guys were in black and the good guys were in white. And it was like, you're like, oh my God, the stormtroopers are bad. How can they be bad? They're dressed in white. It's, I was thinking the white cow, they're not, the cowboys are always, in the white color. And it
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
weird. So that's what struck me, and I thought it was like a western in some. I did draw some parallels, and I thought it was a western because there was a lot of shooting. It was just with lasers
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff, but
And that
yeah,
and that technology, realistically, and I will say that probably pre to that, 2001 Space Odyssey
Oh yes.
is a hats off, is also a hats off to technology used uh, at that time, to say just jaw dropping what these
Yes.
guys figured out to do with backwinding film.
Yes. But we're old. We're not that old in that we saw 2001 in the theater. 'Cause
Yeah, right,
I think it
exactly.
was 3 or 2 when it came out, and yeah, my parents didn't. Even if they did take me,
Yeah.
I have no recollection or
Well, you saw
appreciation.
well, you saw the moon landing over and over again on
Yes.
TV. Almost
Yes.
almost the same thing. Remarkable
Right.
simulation. But
Right.
we'll save that for another
Yes.
episode.
Yeah. That's another great podcast. So that's my list. C squared. Anything else?
Nope.
It's
I
been a
think
fabulous
I'm
60
good.
years.
Again, my apologies to George Lucas.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry
sure
about that, George. It's
he's
late.
really upset that you mistook him for Spielberg. All right, let's get out on. You can reach us via email at onefortheroadpodcast@gmail.com. Our soon to be constructed website will be onefortheroad.net. Like and subscribe us on YouTube. We are on 3 audio platforms, those being rss.com, Spotify, and Podbean. For C Squared, this is Mr. K. Have a great week.
Mr. K, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Folks, always great for you to listen. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thanks for your support.